5, 4, 3.
I'm so excited I have to come back into the room. Human Connections, Episode 5, with Kai Graham. How you doing, Kai?
I like being number 5.
You like being number 5?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm
Look-
happy to be here. Excited.
Listen, we were just talking before the show, and I tell you what, I think this is going to be one of the most fun Human Connection episodes, if you call them, that we've done yet. And we were just explaining how you and I in a labeled world are the exact opposite ends of the spectrum, and somehow we came together when we met and connected on a level that's outside of all of that.
For sure.
Right? And when it comes to amazing humans, you're one of them. So thank you for being here, number one.
You're welcome.
Seriously, I can't thank you enough. So just to set up for everybody, we met probably a little over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago.
3.
Has it been 3?
It's been 3.
Where does the time go? Wow. All right,
It's
so
been
we
3.
met 3 years ago, and I believe we met through a phone call, mutual friend of ours.
Mm-hmm.
And we met the first time here in this building,
Mm-hmm. We did.
right?
This very building.
Right, because at that time, you were working for a company that was renting some space here.
Yeah.
Yep. And you came in and we met, and we've been talking ever since.
Yeah. I think first time I came to your office, I was just planning on dropping in. Here's the face to the name. Let's talk more later. And I think I was here for like 2.5 hours. And when I left, I literally left. Like, I've got to, like, Chad's a friend. Like, it's I have not had that happen very often in my lifetime. I probably can count on one hand when I've met a person and within minutes have just felt a connection. And doesn't matter how long we go without seeing each other, without talking. There's a lot of people in life you reconnect, and it's like time stood still in between the absence.
Right.
And we catch up in 30 seconds, 60 seconds, and it's like, here we are.
It's almost like a deep understanding of we know
Yeah.
exactly what each other's going through at
Yeah.
some level.
Sure.
And the feeling's absolutely mutual, 1,000%. So we meet 3 years ago here. I want to tell the audience a little bit about, we're on the mentor set, and I mentor for a living, and every day that goes by, it becomes something more and more, and I can't even tell you the amount of gratitude I'm waking up with every day, and I'm backing down some of the other businesses, and I'm doing this more because the response from this Human Connections is people just talking authentically and being honest with each other is not happening out there in the world a ton. It seems to be happening more, and I definitely also want to be a proponent of that, right? And keep doing that. So we put these together to have these conversations. So we'll do like three segments, 20-minute segments. I want to hear a little bit about your upbringing, where you're from, life. And second, some of those trials and tribulations along the way and how mentors and people played into that. And then we'll get into some of the stuff that you and I have done together. And then we'll get into some like solution stuff.
For
and
sure.
We'll do that. So anybody that's watching can understand there'll be like 3 segments and they can click through it. I noticed that in podcasting today. You can see your watch time and who stays on for how long, and it's kind of nifty to watch human patterns.
Yeah, for sure. Life is one giant social experiment to me.
Yeah.
A series of them. And Human Connection is a social experiment that I like to observe just in my everyday life. I'm fortunate enough to travel
Right.
quite frequently when I work, and so I am front seat to a lot of observation of the social experiment that exists out there, aka humankind. So
And you are involved with a not a small company, and you get to see a lot of people.
yeah, a lot.
Yes. All right. So tell me a little bit. Where does Kai hail from?
Goodness. So my origins, I was born and raised in Hawaii, on the island of Oahu, predominantly in the town of Laie, which is on the north shore of Oahu. Which, if anyone's ever been to Oahu, if you visited the Polynesian Cultural Center,
Right.
that literally was in my backyard.
And I was on Kaneohe Marine Base,
Yep.
and that is when we started talking. That's right. I remember
Yep.
that. Okay.
And I was born in the town just next to Kaneohe, Kailua. So
Kailua.
got my beginnings. Didn't have the smoothest start. I was born to an unwed mother who was going to college in Oklahoma, was from
Right.
Hawaii, and came home for Christmas break. And I was born December 28th, and early in the morning, she had gone to her parents' door and knocked and said, I need to go to the emergency room. And they were like, why? Well, I'm going to have a baby. They didn't even know she was pregnant.
Ooh.
So I came into the world, and it was like surprise, big time, everywhere. So I actually spent the first 10 days of my life in the hospital waiting for a family. And I like to think that that set the stage for a lot of things that transpired over the rest of my life that now that I look back
Right.
make a lot of sense. Closing a lot of those gaps that I
Right.
felt throughout my life. But yeah, I had I had an awesome childhood on the one hand, magical almost, growing up on an island, 100 yards from the beach.
Right.
I spent my free time swimming in the ocean and playing. And then on the other hand, I had some really significant early childhood trauma that occurred in Hawaii. So
When you said in the hospital for 10 days waiting for a family, you say you were adopted?
I was adopted.
Got
I
it.
just flew right past that. I was adopted.
Got it.
So I was
Okay.
adopted at 10 days. Interestingly enough, my parents were in California celebrating with my father's family.
Right.
And the doctor who delivered me happened to be a good friend of my grandmother's. My parents had already adopted one child a year prior. So this other baby shows up, and he called my grandmother and said, do you think that they'd be interested in another child? My grandmother said, well, they're in California. Called them. This is, I'm not going to give my age away completely because I don't think I look my age or act it, but this is the 70s.
Yeah.
And so jumping back on a flight wasn't so simple.
Right.
So anyway, my grandparents actually went to the hospital and picked me up and brought me to their house for a week.
Okay.
And my parents' first encounter of me was at an airport, where my grandparents brought me to the airport, and my parents got off the plane with my older sister, and that's when they met me for the first time.
And these are your parents to today.
These are my parents today. Yep.
Wow.
So
Yeah, we couldn't just fly right past that.
Yeah.
That's important.
It's funny. I just assumed everyone would know. I sat there for 10 days, and then it all came to
It all
be.
came together.
Yeah, so we wound
So-
up having 4 adopted children in my family.
Okay.
2 girls, 2 boys, and everything from 3 of us were born in Hawaii,
Right.
and then we did an international adoption of my youngest brother from Korea. So
That works. So in that childhood in Hawaii, you said there were some traumas. I
Mhm.
stopped you right there. There were some traumas that occurred during that time, and you think that shaped some of the rest of the years as well.
for sure, I think it was a combination of what I like to think of as, in a way, a perfect storm. I was adopted, which I think for a lot of adopted people, there is an instant sense of separation anxiety or not belonging, or you look at your parents, you don't look like them. There's the wondering, and a lot of this is, I'm going to caveat to, is
Yeah.
based on the situation.
Right.
In addition to that, I was raised devout Mormon, or LDS,
In Hawaii?
in Hawaii.
Really?
In actually, the town of Laie is the most densely populated Mormon town in the world. So if you take Mormons per square foot,
Okay.
you'd think Salt Lake City, Utah, but Laie,
Right.
Hawaii is. I went to an elementary school. I believe at one point we had, I think, like 700 students, and there was one child that was not LDS. So we're talking like devout.
LDS was putting the work in over on
Sheltered.
the island.
Yeah, and so take adopted, take raised devout LDS,
Yeah.
add in some trauma,
Right.
add in some gender confusion, and there's your perfect storm, right?
Right.
So you have what wound up happening is you had Kai by day, Kai on paper, which looked like this very put together, confident athlete, scholar, musical person, and by night I like to call it, or in my own mind, it was a rough place to be. And I think anybody I think we've all experienced trauma, right? Everyone's lost, because trauma is loss. It's typically loss of something. It's loss of something, either material, physical, or something that's not. It could be something, loss of innocence,
Right.
loss of a parent, loss of a pet. So we all experience trauma in different degrees, but my trauma was early enough and big enough that, yeah, it definitely shaped a lot of what happened.
It's I haven't told you this. We'll tell the world it because I think it's what's authentic. But what's funny is my big trauma piece of my life actually initiated in Hawaii, believe it or not. Yeah, it initiated in Hawaii with an islander, and happened back in the States. But that's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. I have people ask me all the time, "You're from Hawaii. Why don't you live in Hawaii?" And
Some connections there.
the first thing I say is it's way too expensive.
Right.
But the authentic answer, which most people don't have time for,
Yeah.
is, it's just
Just doesn't
it's-
fit.
Doesn't fit.
Doesn't feel good.
I like to visit, but yeah, it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, I don't play tennis anymore for that reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Yeah, my trauma was with a tennis, someone who played tennis and ruined the sport for me.
Yeah.
And I love tennis. Yeah.
And I'm not a believer that you have to go out and reframe every single thing in your life. I think there are some things that you can just let go of, and it's okay.
Yeah, some are just rooted though, right? Like some you just can't get rid of.
Yeah.
And I actually say it when currently we're going through a lot of LGBTQ diversity, equity, inclusion training, and there came a point and somebody wanted me to do something, and I said, yeah, I won't. I'm sorry, I cannot. Right? I have some buried trauma, whether you want me to do it or not. It's just not going to happen. Because they were first offended that I wouldn't be involved. And then secondly, I was like, yeah, no. Ultimately, they ended up respecting my wishes, but there was a lot of push on me before then. But that's some of that rooted stuff where it's there. You deal with it, you get over it, but it still leaves a scar. It's like a fence. You can shoot holes in a fence all day long. There's a lot of holes. Sure, you can go out and fix them and patch them, but what's left? All the scars.
Yeah.
Scars are still there. So that's I take what you say close to heart, obviously, right? So you're on the islands. When do you leave the islands, or how's that work?
I left the islands originally in 10th grade. My parents wanted me to go to a private school, and I didn't want to go to that school. So we were spending the summer in Utah
Okay.
and living with, visiting some close friends of ours, and they had a daughter who was 3 weeks older than me.
Yeah.
We put our heads together and thought, well, hey, we know a way to get you out of going to this private school. You just stay here and go to school. So we literally called the family council, sat down, and presented this option to our parents, and they said yes. So I did my 10th grade year in Centerville, Utah, and then my dad decided to do a sabbatical. He's a university professor
Okay.
in Utah, which then allowed me to stay my junior and senior years in Utah. So I spent 3 years of my high school years in Utah, and the day after I graduated high school, my family moved back to Hawaii. I stayed in Utah for college. So officially, I left Hawaii. I went back home probably till I was 21.
Right.
But originally, I left when I was 14.
Got it.
So
Yeah, I was 13 when I lived there. Yeah. So I was around the same age. Remember going to school with flip-flops, locals, and board shorts. You didn't even have to wear shirts.
you know, and you didn't even have to wear the slippers. We would put them on our hands and run.
Yeah.
Thinking that they gave us superpowers to run faster to school. But I grew up, my first 12 years, I remember wearing shoes, obviously, to church,
Right.
special occasions, but other than that, we were barefoot and
Everywhere all
and
the
that's,
time.
That's part of the magical part, right? Is
Yeah.
you go to Hawaii now, you can drive down any street, you'll see a baby toddling in the front yard in their diaper, and there's not a lot of sense of like, you have to show up a certain way. It's a very inclusive environment.
Right.
But it also has its flaws, like any other place.
Right.
So
It's like you say, it's a big experiment,
it is.
right? We're all rolling through it, and the masses determine. Someone made a statement once about how the world works, and I wasn't ready to hear it ever until this point, I guess. But they said, "Listen, you live in a place where the masses determine what the rules are." And I think it came down to some voting on something, and they're like, if 51% says it's going to be this way, it's going to be that way, and that's something you have to understand. That's where you live. That's how it works. And I went, okay, thank you. I went, okay, fair enough. That's where I live. That's where I work with. So you're saying that if I want something to be different, I need to get 51% of the people to decide that it should be different. And I said, welcome to democracy. Welcome to the system that we have, that we live in here today in the United States. And I thought that was really interesting, because it's kind of like, so you're saying there's a chance, and I think we see that going on right now with so many things. Everybody's fighting for this to be okay or not okay, or what does it look like in the U.S. for us? So,
Or you just have to be okay
yeah,
with being different.
yeah,
There are some things that come down to actual laws that govern, that then,
Right.
would totally impose upon people, but for the most part with human behavior, just like most girls play with dolls, okay? Probably way more than 51%. So you either go with the 51% or you be okay being the girl playing with Legos and trucks.
yeah,
And, we grew up generationally, I'm just right before you, we grew up in a time when the role playing was real set,
right,
This is what you're going to do, this is how you're going to do it. And then there came a point where we started going, wait a minute, this is what I really like.
right.
So, yeah, I find myself in that 51%, surprisingly enough, quite a bit. I'm actually quite a traditional person.
I was gonna say, from what I can see, you live extremely conservative,
Yeah.
if you will.
Yeah.
So like, a certain part of your life is extremely conservative, and another part is extremely liberal,
Yeah.
right? Like, and I hate classifying it that way, but for words, I don't feel like there's enough words to express what needs to be expressed. Sometimes I feel like we're missing words, right? But you're right. Like, when I watch and see you operate, that's why you've always been a bit of an anomaly to me. Just a downright good human. So you're in Utah. Where you go after Utah? 14, 15 years old, and then
Yeah, so I went to Brigham Young University
BYU, been around for a long time.
for my undergrad. Played a lot of sports. Played a huge role in my life. Sports.
What kind of sports?
Oh gosh, my favorites.
Yeah.
Swimming, volleyball, basketball, soccer. I was a soccer goalie for about 10 years.
Okay.
I threw the discus. I threw the shot put. I played softball.
Nice.
I played baseball for 2 practices, and unfortunately got hit in the head by a pitch, and then did never play baseball again.
Just do that
But I
anymore.
played anything that I could because, going back to the trauma piece, sports was my way to work out what I was feeling inside. If I didn't play sports, I became real angry little kid. My mother actually used to say a lot how I was the sweetest, never cried, most smiley little baby, and then when I was like 4 years old, a change occurred. And well,
Right.
yeah, the change occurred, Mom. I experienced trauma, and I
Right.
wound up experiencing trauma from 4 to 7 predominantly, but
Right.
like 4 to 14 overall.
Right.
So in order to get those feelings out, sports became literally my
release.
lifesaver. It saved my life. It also taught me a sense of community, a sense of family, that even though I had been adopted into a loving home, any gaps in that home life, sports fill for me. So I go to BYU, playing sports. I leave BYU to go on a Mormon mission
Right.
to Germany. This is when I get my first taste of something's not quite right from the religious perspective. I'm literally biking through on a bike path with my mission companion behind me in a little town called Duisburg, which is on the western border of Germany, bordering the Netherlands, a very industrial area, and I stop my bike dead cold. My companion almost runs in the back of me. What's going on, Sister Graham? And I said, can't do this. And she was like, what? It's like, I don't believe this. Like, yeah, I can't do it. Like, I feel like a fraud. I can't go sell
Yeah.
this to one more person because it's not. So, she's freaking out. We go back to the apartment. I call my mission president, who governs everything, and say, I can't do this. He had us immediately get on a train and come to his home, and he kept telling me, I kept saying, I can't do this, but you're so good at it.
Right.
But I don't think you understand. I can't do this, but you're so good at it. It's like, that's not the point. I can't do this.
Instead of not listening to what you need,
Yeah.
kept trying to force what
Yeah.
he or she
Yeah.
needed at that time. It's
And
crazy.
yeah, a lot of people can fake things and still be good at it. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean they should be doing that. And I called home. I called my father, and my parents were really shocked. And my dad asked me if I would take a week
Right.
to contemplate my decision. And I was like, sure, call you in a week and let you know the same thing, but I'll give you the week because I respect you. I called him a week later and said, funny thing,
Still the
still
same.
not a fit.
Right.
And he said, well, I have been praying about it, and I received an answer that you're where you need to be.
Yeah.
And it was the first time that I really stood up to my parents and said, that's great, Dad, but I can only receive my own answers. You can't receive answers for me. Like, regardless
Right.
of what we believe in this entire universe, I receive my own answers.
Right.
Otherwise, I'd be a puppet. You'd be the puppeteer, and I'm coming home. And I don't want to paint my parents in a light that is disparaging because I love them and they're coming
Yeah.
from their own belief system. And part of my journey has been the fact that I love and respect them despite who they are.
Mm-hmm.
I used to demand it from them, but then I finally realized, oh, how about I just accept them?
Right.
And their decision, though, I say that because their decision was, okay, go ahead and come home, but you can't come here.
Right.
You have to go somewhere else. And that was the first kind of like, wow, if I'm going to buck the system,
Right.
I'm in for some alone time, some growth time. And it was the start of, many years of landing where I'm landing now. Where I've landed now.
Where you landed now, that's a great spot. Let's stop for a second. I got to take all that in. You gave me the chills. those aha moments, right? When you just know it's not right for you.
Yeah.
And to hear you say how you would respect, you need to respect them so they can respect you, and that it's a two-way street. There is no it's my way and you have to believe this, that two-way street. So let's stop there. I'm going to break it and then we're going to start we're going to start again so that we can break it up for people. That was great.
Good.
All right, so we're back with Kai again, and Kai landed, if you will. That first 20 minutes was something else. You kept giving me chills, killing me. I love your power, number one. Like, more powerful than so many people, and it's intoxicating, really. I got to stand up and walk around for a second. I wouldn't say passionate, and very sure of exactly who you are, which is, for me, something important. So, and going through that first section, we talked about trauma and childhoods and religion. I actually have somebody who's going to be on this next week who, I believe, lost a child at a young age, like 12 or 13, and she wrote a book overcoming that, of how to overcome that trauma for a parent. And I believe, and I'm not sure, I'll find out, but I believe they went the opposite way, as they had no religion younger, and then found religion, and I believe this is a Christian or Catholic based, or I'm not sure what it is, but I can't wait to hear about it. But every story I see, philosophy and religion and parenting, all these things play this very unique role. And if you just listen carefully, you can start to see some of the things that are happening in the world. And there's nothing new under the sun. It's all the same thing over and over again.
Yep.
Right? And you being as honest and open and as authentic as you just were is, I think, what's extremely powerful for other people, and especially the youth, to look at and go, okay, here's this person who's been through this as well, and they're talking about it openly, and that's huge. So I appreciate you for that.
Yeah.
So talking about you landed here in Las Vegas?
I landed back in Salt Lake City, Utah,
Landed in Salt Lake.
where
All
I
right.
finished my schooling and began working for a company. And it was there. I was 25 years old when I finally realized that the plan that I thought I'd set myself up for in life, which was to meet a man and have children and prosper under the banner of heaven,
Right.
for lack of a better word,
Right.
was not going to work
Right.
without me being miserable. I grew up so sheltered, Chad, that I didn't even know what gay meant. Okay, I didn't know gay was possible. I didn't know. I thought that I had just gotten emotionally involved with other females and crossed the line, for which
Right.
I was eternally sorry for
Right.
and repentant. And it wasn't until I was 25 that I had an epiphany of sorts that, like, I'm attracted a little more than just friends with
Right.
with females, and
Don't they say love is love?
love is love, yeah, and,
Right.
and it should be. And I think, just touching really quickly back on the religion piece, I think if we committed ourselves to spirituality rather than religion, we'd see a completely different world.
I don't disagree with you. However, I think they all have a piece too,
yeah.
right? So there's
Yeah.
things about religion that I really enjoy. Do not sleep with thy neighbor's wife.
Yeah.
I'm cool with that one. Like if that's
It's a definite guidebook.
like yes,
Yeah.
like there are some teachings in that book that I fully agree with.
Yeah.
Whether or not I believe with the end of it, but for sure
Yeah.
with you. So the spiritual, the energy, like I feel like we're in a time of great awakening now, right? If you take it back to the 16, 17, 1800s when philosophy or the Age of Enlightenment truly started having some power, I feel like we're in that again. People are hearing and seeing.
Yeah.
But I dig on the spiritual thing for sure.
I think something like the commandments is a good reminder, a good guide, a good rule book, but I think it's your innate sense of spirituality that prevents you from doing those things, right? I don't kill because the commandment told me not to kill. I don't kill because I don't believe it's
Doesn't feel right.
nice to other people,
Right.
like or committing adultery or those kinds of things.
Right.
But totally with you on the same vein there. So 25 years old, realize I'm what I now know to be gay, and
Right.
so I pour everything into my religion with the understanding that, and I make a deal with God, I'm going to give you 200%, and you're going to give me the plan that I've known nothing but my entire life. I begin to volunteer with my church. I begin to work in the LDS temple. I begin to work with youth, and I literally lived celibate in every aspect of the word for 5 years. And it was a time that I mean, it's the equivalent of like going into a monastery in a sense, but I'm out in the world, right? But I'm giving everything I have, and it was during that time that I
To like, and sorry for a better phrase, to like pray the gay
Pray the
away.
gay
Like
away,
you were
yeah.
trying to.
yeah.
Just no way.
Yeah, it was the greatest experiment that I've ever conducted. Was
Whoa.
I'm going to give everything
Okay.
and then provide it, and to me that was my truth meter, right?
Wow.
So I'm going to go give it all, and then and what happened was, I had a realization that I got closer to God in this, and for once in my life started to develop a relationship with the higher being that I'm going to call God.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a higher being that who I realized like loves me and wouldn't have made a mistake, and so I came out at the age of 30.
Okay.
I came out. I was almost immediately excommunicated from the religion that I had only
Poured
ever
your
known.
life into, yeah.
And that then set me on another course because the day after my excommunication, which is a big deal and could be its own podcast session,
Right.
I woke up and I had cried, I think, for 12 hours straight. I don't know if anyone's ever timed the length of crying, but to cry for 12 hours straight is a lot.
I
Even
said
when
you were strong.
I mean, I cried, I wept. It was my identity. I had given everything, and it showed. I felt it was traumatic. It was loss. And then I realized, oh my gosh, I can be good because I want to be, not because I have to be.
Was there anybody at this time of your life that was around that you could turn to? or because they were all connected with the church, you couldn't?
I had a couple of friends that were very supportive at the time, but I couldn't tell my parents.
Right.
I couldn't tell those closest to me, but I did have there were a couple of good people that showed up for me during that time. I
Okay.
have to say that. And it's interesting because we're not friends now, but at that time they were very much there for me. I didn't even tell my parents. It took me 4 months to tell my father and 2 years to tell my mother.
Right.
And when I told my father, his comment was that he felt like a star had fallen out of the sky.
Oh.
And so it just kind of confirmed that, like, well, that's why I
Yeah.
waited to tell you. But it's been a beautiful thing, though, because that's where I have found my true spirituality. It's because I was
Right.
able to put the book down, which I
Right.
had read over and over and over again, and just, I had my roadmap. And I credit my religious upbringing to the fact that inherently I know the difference between right and wrong. I know,
Inherently.
Like-
That's the right word, yep.
and I don't regret that at all. So, stayed in Utah, worked, came out, started getting relationships, and lived in Utah for almost 20 years, and then moved here to Las Vegas 3.5 years ago for work.
So we had met when you hadn't been in Vegas that long.
About 6 months.
Wow. Okay. That, you know, I tell, when I'm mentoring, I typically say that whatever helps you or makes you a better person, I'm okay with. And I want to tell this story because this is really important to you and I, to our relationship, essentially. Is there's the pronoun stuff we worked with, and we had that conversation when we first met, and I didn't understand it at all. And I want to tell you a little story real quick so you understand how important you've been in my life. So up until the point we met, I didn't understand. I understood gay, like I'm okay with that, but then I started getting into pronouns and LGBTQ. Like I didn't get it. I didn't follow along with it. I have 2 daughters. I haven't dealt with it to this point yet, and just didn't understand it, and have some trauma with the word gay that is hard for me. And we met, and you said to me, I call you he or she or they, and we went through that, and I said, I don't know how, right? I think I told you, I said, I don't know how, and don't take this offensively, but if I do it, it's not intentionally, right? And you said to me, call me Kai. And so simply, you fix something that I had no idea how to do. Is if you respect me or you respect me, you'll call me Kai. And I said, okay. And I had to go home and think about that, right? And figure that out and work through it. And what it ended up being was perfect, because you didn't try and force me to believe something that I may or may not have been against, or you just said, if you want to talk to me, call me Kai. And I was like, yes. And that was when you like won me over as a person, number one, hands down. Now, full circle. So you were brought in, everybody's brought into people's lives for one reason or another. You know this, right? The energy of the world, it works in mysterious ways. So you come in, we meet, we go through your story, we talk, we hit it off, and the world serves up a youth to me that's going through what you're going through. And who do you think I immediately called? Right?
I remember that phone
Do you remember
call.
that phone call? And I think, so there's that, and we can talk about that in depth at some point also. But there was a youth, so you were put into my life, then this youth was put into my life. And I reached out to you and I said, I don't understand. Can you help me? I don't even know how to start helping. And we reached out to some religious backing. We reached out to some spiritual backing, and we had all of you in here.
You created a tribe.
I created a tribe for this young person, surrounded that young person with that tribe, and said, here's a bunch of facets, you choose. And I will tell you, to this day, I don't think you don't talk to him either, but the last text that I received was, I have my own apartment now, I have a job, and someone once told me X, Y, and Z, thank you. And that's to the 5 people that showed up to come around that human at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And that human chose those conversations and how that all worked. And I know he had talked to you and some of the others and was trying to find that path and ultimately found it. And that wasn't a lot of time. I mean, how much time did you put into that at the end of the day? 2 or 3 hours? that person is living not on the streets anymore, but a better life. And so I say that because the world works in super mysterious ways, and that energy connects. And when good people just stand up and say, yeah, I'll help for a second, that's what happens, is all of a sudden someone's life is redirected or changed or helped. So I wanted you to know that. And then the final piece on that is this holiday season, had no idea. I have a relative that showed up at my house for holidays, and she had a beard. Out of the blue. I wasn't expecting it, didn't realize it, had no clue. And had you not helped teach me what understanding is, and I think that's the best word I can say, is I don't have to believe it or want it or whatever. It doesn't have to be part of my life, but to understand you, at least attempt to understand you, you helping me with that, I think I reacted differently in that moment than I ever would have reacted before. And I want to thank you for that.
Oh, you're welcome.
Super important to me, and probably to my family and to them as well, right? Because there would have been a time I would have put the box or the label around it and been like, what is happening here?
And then it gets awkward and
then it gets awkward and real, and it's like, are you a guy or a girl? Like, what is going on right now? And it's not that, I think it's not that we have to, you don't have to decide. You can just say, I don't understand, I'd like to understand more, and, you know, as long as you're not doing anybody any harm or wrong, you do you.
It's intention.
I'll support you.
It's intention. I get misgendered quite a bit, and, you know, I left off in my chronological history with gay.
Yeah.
That was just a piece in the evolution of Kai, right? So, Chad, I'll be honest. Like, there's some days I don't know where the hell I fit in, but Kai fits in 1,000% of the time, and it's a landing place where I know Kai, and Kai doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Like when I talk about misgendering and I travel a lot, I get misgendered by TSA all the time. You go into the body scanner, they have to pick a pink or a blue, and I can't even tell you how many times, and I can feel the energy.
Right.
Somebody turns to the supervisor, and I'm like, oh, they pressed the wrong button again. And then they have to rescan me, and then they have to do what I call lovingly my TSA massage, and I solved all that by getting TSA pre-check, because then you just walk through the metal detector. But there's this moment where people misgender, and then they question, and then they correct themselves.
But can you imagine the confusion from our side?
Yeah. And how I
We
deal
don't
with it.
intend to.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And so, and it used to really just make me introvert into myself and just like put my head down. And now I own it, I embrace it, and I just look at him and say, hey, it doesn't matter to me.
That is the most beautiful thing about you, and because there was many times that I would, and not intentionally, and you'd look at me, and I could tell you were looking at me, recognizing that I said something that I shouldn't, not necessarily shouldn't, but that I didn't. I forget what the word is, but I didn't use Kai, right? Like I didn't say your name. I had said he or she or they or them, like whatever it was, and you'd look at me, but the look was love. It wasn't. It was just like. And it took me a few times, and I realized I get it now.
Yeah.
Right? As a human, I don't have to agree with anything, but if I want to have a conversation with you or be in your life or talk to you or I appreciate you, I love you, like I need to respect you, and to do that, this is what it is. And I think there needs to be more of that. And I think you're an excellent teacher of that. I hands down, when you say you used to get offended but you don't now, that is a true area of comfort that you've reached that most people strive for their entire life.
For sure. For sure. And if I could pass anything on to another individual of learning to be comfortable in their skin rather than looking for other skin to put on,
Right.
I would feel so fulfilled. I mean, in between all this is where I've been, and this is where I grew up, and I spent 20 years in Utah. There's a really big chapter of my life that involves alcoholism and going into residential treatment to get sober, and then becoming a sponsor, and then becoming a trained interventionist, and a sober companion and a mentor of sorts in the recovery world. And I couldn't have done all of that. My platform is, at the end of the day, when you have a human that is struggling, typically the message behind that struggle almost all of the time is, I'm not good enough. And if you can go into that human and help them feel good enough, it is crazy what you can do in a couple of hours. And then you get text messages like, I've got a job, I've got an apartment, I'm good enough.
So powerful. And you just reminded me of a deep conversation we had because we had talked. We had talked about my friend at the time who was having some problem with substances.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, time goes by quick and so many things
Does.
happen that you forget. It's not something else we connected on because you did help with that trauma.
Yeah.
And what do you call it exactly? Like when you say coaching, like
Recovery coaching.
recovery coaching, whether it be
Basically what I did was provided what are called like concierge services. So
Yeah.
interventions and, let's go back to the tribe that you built for this young individual. If only everyone could be so lucky as to have someone like you. It was just such a badass move. We're going to bring together like these powerful people and we're going to surround and encircle this person in need with love, which you set out clearly is we are here out of love.
right.
And this is here for you to take, but you have to be the one to reach out and take it. And you have your spiritual person and your, all of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's too bad. I mean,
I found this on the web.
Okay. Even my watch is getting chills. We don't need you right now, Siri. If everyone could be so lucky, because when I did interventions, it was me and then a family that was typically very lost and scared
Right.
because what they saw was their loved one slipping away and they needed them back.
Right.
What I loved the most probably was the sober companionship that I would do, where I would go and live with people who struggle with substance abuse and mental illness even, and teach them how to live and exist comfortable in their skin, despite diagnosis like bipolar and addict. Because, at the end of the day, I may have shed my addictions or dependencies, but I still have one dependency that seems to linger that my quest in life is to constantly overcome, and that is feeling good enough. I'm addicted to going back to the message of I'm not good enough. It's like I am so committed to suffering and not being good enough that I keep myself in this space of constantly looking for recovery from it. And I know I just spewed out a whole lot right there, but at the end of the day, it's like we matter.
But maybe that's the answer. Maybe you sitting here in this room and maybe what you've helped me do with the youngster and maybe what mentor is to me, maybe it's similar to what it is to you. This is my therapy, Kai.
Yeah. Mine too.
This is my therapy, working with kids, working with the youth, working with people who have gone through extreme traumas. We've at least overcome it to a place that we can operate from.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean it's all gone,
Yeah.
but we can operate. And it's very selfish, but it's my therapy. It makes me feel good. I like to do it. I like to help other people. I like to understand people. And I don't wish to push anybody on anything, right? So the not feeling good enough, I have a friend who just said something similar to me the other day, and I will tell you, like I just told them, it's unacceptable, and you will need to change your ways. I don't know which way you need to change, but you will need to change your ways because you are more talented and capable than most people I've ever met, if not just from the human connection standpoint and emotional intelligence. Kai, emotionally intelligent, connected, and grounded, and there are a ton of people in this world that need that right now. There is an undertone of things going on right now that nobody wants to talk about, but everybody feels it, and everybody's always not feeling so great, or it's just off. There's things that are off, and I'm hoping that this and many other people who are doing the same thing is sit down, talk, difference is no difference, just let's figure it out, because people are suffering. Even of those of us that have it together, there's still those questions.
Yeah, I think we miss out because of labels on so many things in life. So, I'm constantly thinking of social experiments. So I thought of one where, because I think if you get to know people first,
Right.
before you judge them by by their label,
Right.
the label tends to not matter. If we took 10 people and we went up to a hot dog stand and we all ordered hot dogs and we sat around in a circle and we ate the hot dogs,
Right.
and we got to know each other and we talked about what are you doing this weekend and all of that, and then you found out that one of them was gay,
Right.
or that one of them was an atheist,
Right.
or that one of them, struggles with addiction, you're going to be less likely to judge that label than if you did the judgment first. You probably never would have even gotten to the hot dog, is what I'm saying.
I should walk into a room and be like, I'm a convicted felon, everybody. I just want everybody to know I'm a convicted felon. It changes the dynamic of the room. I've done it out of experimentation because I am, and I think it's, when I was younger, I would do it to set the tone for certain things, and there was a bit of ego behind it at the time, like I don't care what people think about me. And now what's weird is, as people get to know me, I don't realize it anymore because I used to tell everybody first conversation we had, just so you know, I've been in prison.
Yeah.
Right? So in case I can't be here in this beautiful house, or like if I'm a problem for you or you're in politics, I've been in trouble. Right? I'd tell them right up front. I think that it might have closed a lot of doors along the way. Now I forget to tell people.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter anymore because I let it go.
Well,
right?
I forget too. You have to keep reminding me that you're a felon.
Right?
I literally forget, and I watch the podcast yeah.
And so I think that's along those lines.
But why? Because it doesn't define you.
Right, it doesn't define me, and it's in a label. And I want to come back to those labels. We're going to take a short break here real quick and come back to some labels. All right, took a little break, and we're back. I had to take a second for a tissue. Kai's got me all worked up. The energy level, it feels good.
Yeah, it does.
Doesn't it? It feels good when you can talk to somebody, and it feels even better that I can sit and talk with you and actually hear you and listen to you. And the cameras, they've disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Because in my heart, I feel like our conversation could be helpful to the youth for mentoring in some capacity, some shape or form. Teachers, coaches, parents, moms, dads, like just listen to people talk. And so, again, I appreciate you for coming on and doing this again today.
You're welcome.
And we've gone through some pretty powerful segments. And I can only imagine I got to have you on like 1,000 more times because the excitement level is insane. But let's talk a little bit more about the filters and putting people in boxes and this last little bit. Let's talk about like, what do we do moving forward, right? Let's pretend that the world, that we are sitting in a lounge and we're having a conversation about ideas and what could the world look like or how could it be different in a positive way. And not that it's all bad. And I don't want to preface this because I don't think the world is a horrible place. I don't think there are some bad things going on, but I think that those bad things are perpetuated by the media cycle because it's profitable for that to happen. And I believe in the capitalistic system because I've been raised in the capitalistic system, although I see it does have some nuances to it. And Brian, who's behind the computer here, wait till we have him on. Him and I have conversations that are pretty intriguing. He's a big brain, much bigger brain than I am. But there's a system that's in place. We're in it. You can't just take a magic wand and swipe it and change it, but you can definitely start those conversations. So if we were talking, we're sitting here talking now, but if we were talking to the world, like talk to me about some ideas or concepts of how things could be different or connect people more, ideas that you've had. Like, can you think of those things that have changed you along the way and you said, man, if people just did this, it would have been helpful?
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is quit avoiding situations that might be uncomfortable. And just a simple...
You mean because I am so uncomfortable about how comfortable you are right now?
Maybe.
I'm trying. It's relieving, but just so you know, okay.
So I walked into CVS, my local neighborhood CVS, the other day, and there were two young ladies with a little ramshackle makeshift table and some pamphlets, clearly needing something from people passing by. And again, social experiment kicks in. I watch people like literally avoid them. They're at the only entrance. The other entrance doesn't work at the CVS, and people are like going behind them and looking the other way. And if I passed by and I just looked at them and said, "Hey, how you guys doing?" And the girl said, "Thank you for asking us. No one's asked us that today." So I went and did my thing, and I came out and I said, "You probably make a lot of people uncomfortable, don't you?" They were like, "Yeah." Come to find out, they were like raising money for Easter seals. Like, they're just doing their thing. But I think we've become so conditioned to assuming someone's going to want something from me. I won't know how to tell them no, that we create these uncomfortable situations for ourselves when instead we could be looking for connections. You know, you never know who you're going to connect with. And so something as simple as saying hi to someone when you're passing by them in the hallway of a hotel, or holding the door for someone, these old chivalrous things that we used to do as a standard. I think we hide behind our screens, we hide behind our apps, we count how many likes we're receiving in order to know if we're popular or if we're being heard, when in
Right.
reality it has to start with connecting with the people around you and just what you do every day.
So spot on. Looking people in the eyes,
Yeah.
saying hello. I have a new thing. I have little stickers. I have these little stickers. I've printed so many of them, and they get
Okay.
smaller. I have little tiny ones. Hold on. In my little pocket right here. I gotta get past my belly. I grunt because I'm older now. So I grunt. Look at these little baby ones.
Oh, you
These
were
are
kidding.
stickers, okay?
Yeah.
So I have a new experiment I'm doing every day. Every time I smile at somebody and they smile back, I give them a little sticker. And I say, you know, for those of us that live, that live by example, you gotta walk the talk.
And you're
Right.
going to make people uncomfortable. Trust. But
Yes.
you also make a connection. And at the end of the day, that connection
Yeah.
is worth a lot more than that moment of uncomfortability.
And it's a game of numbers. If you look at technology and artificial intelligence in the world, and maybe we are in a matrix, maybe we're not, who knows? But everything's numbers, right? There's the natural world, and then there's the AI world, which could be natural. I don't know. But it's numbers. And when they teach you in sales, as a very young man, I did a lot of multi-level marketing as a kid. I mean, I started at like 12. And I used to sell products my whole life. And now I tell everybody I just sell, now I like to try and sell life and like freedoms. But you learn that it's a numbers game. I may get 10 smiles out of 50 people I smile at in a day. And it hurts my heart that day, right? I think, but I go, that was 10 of them. Maybe tomorrow I can get 15 smiles. And the more I keep smiling, and people say it and people do it all the time. But that's where this come from. You believe it or not, the more I wear it, the more people take a second look.
Yeah.
What is he saying?
Yeah.
I'm not saying anything.
I get it. I sport this hat a lot when I'm out and about traveling, and if I had it on the other way, it's stained in the back, and I love it because
Yeah.
it generates conversation, right?
Is it actually working and generating?
It generates
it was-
conversation.
Really?
I love your hat. Oh, hey, thanks. My buddy has this.
Yeah, I don't know what it is,
Mentoring,
but
yeah.
it feels good.
Yeah, I mean, how do you argue with human, right?
You
It's
don't.
it's the common denominator that it doesn't matter who I share my bed with at night,
Mhm.
how I eat my cereal,
Yep.
all of these things
Yep.
that
What color your skin is,
Yeah.
how much money you have.
Yeah.
It doesn't
At the
matter.
end of the day, we're all human. I think. I mean, we could go into that for another
Yeah.
time, but yeah, we have that common denominator, and why not share in that common denominator and build off of it? Because we actually are a lot more relatable than we think. And
Right.
going back to my work in recovery and addiction, addiction in its simplest definition is when you take human connections and replace them with objects or things. So you take your relationship that used to give you support and love and guidance and cheering and all that, and you replace it with shopping and sex and gambling and alcohol,
Yeah.
in order to feel what you used to get from human connections. And recovery is that in reverse.
Right.
It's reestablishing the human connection. So, and recovery doesn't have to just mean you had a problem with drugs. Recovery, you can be recovering from literally the human condition of simply just not being connected enough, and
Right.
therefore not thriving as the human that you are intended to be and achieving your potential. And so it is, I love being in this constant social experiment, and I'm grateful that I went through the hard that I went through, because I say all the time, my life prepared me for my life.
Yeah, it did.
And, people say, hi, you're so strong. Well, I know how to do hard things.
Right.
I struggle with some easy things, but I know how to do hard things.
And talk to any entrepreneur or businessman that's been extremely successful, and he's going to tell you, you better get uncomfortable, because if you don't do the uncomfortable things, you can't get to the next level.
Yeah.
And you've got to give something up to get to the next level. And you make an excellent point. And I think that another reason for the mentor stuff for me specifically is I want to see it. I want to be able to connect with my tribe. I want to be able to connect with the fellow humans. I want to be able to connect with the people that aren't immediately judging me based on a whole bunch of things. Not that we don't naturally, innately, like you said, judge people to, it's a protection mechanism. It's actually in our DNA to do things a certain way. But that's the subconscious working. As soon as it hits the conscious, you now have a decision to make on it. So I see something, I judge it immediately, like, whoop, okay, no, hold on, why are you doing that? Question it, and then try and think through it. And I think that's what this is for me is there enough people out there that can think that way or that do think that way, and we just don't see them? And the more we do this, and the more this happens, the more people I see that are just awesome.
Yeah, I think you're onto something there, because I do think that there are more than we know, because the ones we hear from are not the ones that are the people that we're seeking, right?
They're telling us how great they are. They're not being great. I see a lot of virtue signaling. I had to go look up the definition because everybody kept telling me I was virtue signaling. And I was like, what does that mean? I'm not the most intelligent guy in the world. I was like, what does that mean? So I had to go look it up. And then I looked it up and I went, oh, it means nothing. Because it really doesn't. It doesn't mean anything. If someone's doing something good, does it matter why they're doing it? Does it really matter why they're doing it?
Yeah.
No, not to me it doesn't.
Yeah. When you think about these young people that have come in and out of your life and whose paths you've crossed with, and those that are yet to come, having a person like you, if everyone had a Chad, honestly, I wish everybody could have a Chad. Someone who could just say, listen, it doesn't matter. For me, my first Chad was my wife, my current wife.
Right.
She embraced me through, mind you, when she met me, I was the living under the butch lesbian gay flag, and then underwent this personal transformation, found Kai, and through all of it, I will never forget, one day I turned to her in bed and I just said, I don't know if I'm a girl or a boy. And she just looked at me and was like, I don't know why that matters. And I was like, whoa, I found me a gold mine,
someone who just accepted.
Someone who just accepts. I'm sure she didn't understand it.
No.
The same way that you don't have to understand it.
I still don't understand it, but I'm willing to engage with you as a human being, and all your actions in life. If you were robbing banks, I wouldn't hang out with you regardless of your gender.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
But regardless of your gender, I'll hang out with you when you're doing good human stuff. I could care less. And I think that most people could care less.
Yeah.
I just think that there's so many things being forced right now that people are like, stop.
Yeah.
Don't tell me what I need to believe. And I'm hoping to pull that down a little bit.
Yeah.
So no one's forcing you to believe anything. And if someone's forcing you to believe something, those aren't your people.
Very true. Very true. Beliefs are not like eating your vegetables. Sometimes beliefs don't make you a better person.
Right.
They're not always good for you.
How many years with your partner now?
Oh gosh, we'll be married 10 years this November, and 15, how it goes.
So something that I would typically disagree with and say, I don't see it, it can't work. I don't know how it works. How do you do that? How do you raise kids and confuse the kids? And I could go into all kinds of things that someone of my upbringing would look at this and say, that doesn't make any sense. You need to follow. It's male, female, or biological. You have some kids that are finishing school, that are growing up, that are productive members of society, that are good humans. How does it work like that? How can you do that when you're raising them in a non-traditional environment in a very confusing world?
Yeah.
How do you talk to them?
Yeah. You raise them to be okay with who they are, and then they decide the rest. Like literally.
So you just said I asked you how you do that, and you said them. You said teach them to be okay with who they are. I think you nailed it. I asked you how you do it, and you said you let them be who they are. Yeah.
Seriously, though,
So you empowered them.
Yeah.
So
I want to step in. Trust me. I want to step in. But it's interesting. You just love them and you just raise them. And, You just raise them to feel like they're good enough and they're worth it. And I will never forget one day, my kids, they're 6 months apart. It's a whole nother story. I adopted my daughter from my sister, and I had my son. His father's a sperm donor, so he's not even in the picture. He's literally like a test tube baby. They're like, I don't know, 6 years old. We're at a play date, and I hear my my daughter say, almost like she was offended, like, "You have a dad?" Because this child was saying, you know, my mom and my dad, and my kids don't have a dad.
Right.
And instead of being like, "You have two moms," it was like, "You have a dad?" And it was like, you know, I pulled her back and I said, "Honey, you know, there are all different kinds of families.
Yeah.
And some families have mommies and daddies." And I thought to myself, how ironic, because that's the same thing that people have had to write children's books about, how to explain I have two mommies or I have two daddies.
Yeah.
But with my kids, it was like, I'm going to explain to you that there are mommies and daddies out there. And they were like, oh.
Which up until even now I struggle with it, and I go, it's not right. This can't work, can it? And I'm still trying to understand, which is why you're so powerful for me, is even if I disagree with it, like I can't wrap my head around it, I'm still open to figuring it out. And then I watch you raise two children, and I go, I really need to rethink these things.
Yeah, yeah, you have to accommodate for where society has said this is where the moms and dads, this is the daddy-daughter dance. Like, you have to accommodate.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's been okay. I can't sit here and say that it's been horrible. We haven't been shunned. I haven't ever had kids not want to play with my kids because they had two moms. If anything, when we were in Utah, they were more concerned with what church they belonged to than what their parents look like. And then, you know, I feel, at the end of the day, I feel for my kids. Our youngest, we have an older son who's 26, who he's a gift to me when he was 11, when I met my wife, and, you know, he's out on his own. And then we have the two younger ones that are now 17 and 18 graduating high school. But, you know, you just raise them up. And at the end of the day, they're good people. They're good people.
You love them.
You love them. And I'll tell you, there are moments. I mean, my daughter has, I'm not going to get into it because if she watches this podcast, she's going to be like, "Mommy, I can't believe you did that." But she's in a period of finding out who she is. And
Right.
I am having to walk my talk and say, okay, I'm going to love you regardless of what it is I want for you. As parents, we look at our kids, these little human beings, and I looked at my son and I was like, oh, I cannot wait for you to play football. And I'm going to be there, and we're going to go all the way, baby. And my son came to me at the age of 9 after 2 seasons of Little League and sat me down and said, "So, Mom, I've been researching traumatic brain injury, and I just don't think that I should be playing football." And I was just like, the fact that he sat me down. Yeah. And he's a beautiful distance runner. You know, he runs. He runs cross country, runs distance, and I'm there at the meet with my wife, and I don't think anybody sees the two moms. What they see is the support for the child.
Yeah.
And if they see two moms, they're not watching the right race. Don't watch my race. Watch his race. And my poor kids, I was in a relationship when I became a parent, and so my ex-partner and I split when they were 3, and so my children have 4 mothers. So when you talk about mommy issues, my kids have 4 moms.
Right.
No dad, but plenty of male influence. Plenty of male influence and mentorship. But yeah, I mean, I get it, you know. Yeah. You make it work.
You make it work. And again, I think the most beautiful thing about you is you're doing it. You're not out there telling everybody else what they need to do to fit into your life. You're just fitting it into your life how you do it. And I can't tell you how much mad respect I have for you for that, and how by doing it the way you're doing it, you are helping those of us who probably disagree with it or don't see it as, I don't say disagree, but I just don't understand it enough. You know, my immediate thing is I don't get it and don't understand it, to actually think about it more, right? And to think about it and say, man, even if we're right or wrong or not wrong, and it really based on your beliefs and your morals and your values and how you were raised, and, you know, what continues to get society down a positive path. If you told me, you know, and this, for instance, this might be a little bit edgy, but my trauma experiences was from a gay person. So I immediately take gay and I set it aside and I don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
right? And so that's when I say to you, and I can say that to you, and you're okay with me doing that, is I don't agree with it, right? It's a problem for me. But I've learned to accept and overcome. And if you told me that what you were doing was going to be a pathway for, let's see, one of the worst things I hate in the predators. If what you were doing had a pathway to like predators, I would shut it down immediately. But when I look at your life and I go, and I say that because most of the gay, lesbian, learning transgender, all this stuff in my party days, well, there was a lot of debauchery, right? So I associate, like, I go, ooh, ooh, ooh. But so if it led down a negative path for the youth, then I would say, like, hard stop, can't. But then I look at you and I look at your life and I look at who you are and how you treat people and your mind, and I look at everything about you and I go, it's not all bad. Okay, how do we start separating that? Right? Like, how do you take someone, and when I say you and I are opposite ends, we are, but have gone through the same things to end up here. And I appreciate your openness and honesty, because I think anybody who watches this will understand and see who you are for who you are. And hopefully that will start to change, not change. I don't need to change anybody. Hopefully it will help people come to terms with some of the thoughts that they have. Reason, rational, things that help our youth.
Yeah.
If we can have conversations like this and disagree, then on something, but still be okay with each other, and then the youth watch it, then they're going to learn that, oh wait, you can have a conversation about something, and you don't have to punch each other if you disagree. You can literally just go, huh, that's a different way of looking at it.
Right.
Let me unpack that.
Yeah.
Where does that come from? So, done with my rant, but is there anything you inspired me today. I think I still have tears in my eyes, like I can't stop.
I love talking with you. I love it. I'd like to think that at the end of all of this human experiment, that there is something on the other side. I don't know what it looks like. It's impossible for me to sit here and preach to what it is. I haven't seen it, but
Yeah.
I'd like to think there's something. And I think a huge piece of what will be determined, whatever that is going to be, how did we treat each other while we were here? How did we treat each other despite our belief systems, despite our traumas, despite our negative experiences? And I am by no means perfect. There are days that I get up and my wife's like, you can just be in this room today and I'm going to be in that room, and I can be hard to deal with. I mean, I'm intense. I'm an intense person. But under all of it, what I do my best to do is to maintain my intention. An intention of love, an intention of understanding, because at the end of the day, when I put my head on the pillow, have I done more good than harm? If the answer is yes, I sleep well. If it's no, I better get up and figure it
Right.
out. So, but yeah, and it sounds so simple,
How we treat each other.
but it really is simple. We complicate it.
You don't complicate it. You simplify it, and I thank you. And we're going to shut this down, because if it goes too long, people will click through. They'll go right by it, and I need them to hear you.
For sure.
I want people to hear what you have to say. So we're going to shut this down. And how we treat people, I think, is the best way that we can end it.
Amen.
Let's start at human, and everything else we can work out from there, even in disagreements or even in thought process or difference of opinion. I thank you, Kai.
Thank you.
Kai Graham, you're the best. Bri, you can shut that down so that I can go wipe my eyes. Enjoy. Actual tears of joy.